saying it for years. They want the southern Nigeria, the Yorubas, the Igbos, to cede their land for RUGA. They brought in terrorism to eastern part of Nigeria. And today, I saw some of them arguing between themselves on Twitter yesterday. Some are saying that it is the IPOB, hang on, they said, the terrorism in eastern Nigeria, the escalated insecurity in eastern Nigeria is associated with IPOB. There are some Igbos who believe that, especially those one Nigerianists, okay? And the argument is that every act of criminality in eastern part of Nigeria is linked. There are those who believe that is linked to the IPOB. There's nothing you can tell them. Oh, some couple were going for a wedding and they were killed. IPOB. The prison break in Owerri. Look at how they broke the prison in Owerri. IPOB. So, and I have seen some other people kind of calling them out like, you guys are so stupid. You continue to re-echo the exact narrative that they have actually schemed over time and then edge into your mind. And somehow, because of your own sort of bias against the IPOB, you wanted to see them bad anyway. So then they are bad. But critically actually looking at all these developments as they unfolded, right, is such a big job for some of these mofos, especially some of these mofo Igbos that continue to, gaslight themselves. In case if they don't know, let me explain that to you. Because of this RUGA or no RUGA, ladies and gentlemen, the scheming to bring in Hopeless Uzodimba as the governor of Imo was part of that scheme. That scheme of bringing Devulumayi to APC was part of that scheme. Devulumayi, after meeting Nnamdi Kanu and asking that what is it that we can do to kind of reduce this agitation and all of that, there was no single harassment in eastern part of Nigeria. Yes, Nnamdi Kanu was very sort of direct, to the point that Nnamdi Kanu is being hated by what he said, not what he did. To the point that it has gotten to a stage that they have to create what Nnamdi Kanu says in order to match what he said and say, Shebi he said it. Shebi he said that you should go after those soldiers. Shebi he said that if the policemen come after you, go after them during NSAS. Who did not say that? How many of you can remember how many people who actually said if they come for you, go for them, defend yourself and all of that? But here is something. They wanted land in eastern part of Nigeria. They wanted to situate the RUGA, and they got the weak men of eastern Nigeria to do the job for them very well. They met with Nnamdi Kanu. Nnamdi Kanu gave them 12 demands. In all these demands, 100% is basically about good governance. The Igbos cannot trust the security system in Nigeria. You, the Igbo governors here and the leaders here, you should look into setting up the Igbo security outfits that will protect our people on their farms, that will protect our people in their homes. Invest more in providing electricity for the people of eastern Nigeria to reduce the emigration of our young ones out of Igbo land. This was part of his demand. There was no way he wanted anything for himself. So what did Devulumayi, what did he do? He went on and he said, if IPOB is not going to play ball, he will create a parallel ESN. He will create a parallel IPOB. He will create a parallel ESN in eastern part of Nigeria if Nnamdi Kanu is playing hard to get. Now, the rest is history today. They have managed to kind of create a false narrative that every wrong that goes on in eastern Nigeria is so convenient to blame it on IPOB. While in Ebonyi, they were cutting out land for RUGA. In Imo State, they were killing the people in Olu, in Osu, They were calling them the base of IPOB. But yet, that's the story. Base of IPOB ESN, Olu, Osu in Imo State. But what they are not telling you is that there are thousands of acres of land that have been now graded to become the Imo State RUGA for Fulani. The people in those communities protested. They did not want to give up their land. Don't give our land to our killers. What did they do? They sent the soldiers after them. They said they were supporters of IPOB. They were IPOB base. They killed them, bombed their villages. And today, RUGA settlements are being built in Imo State. In Enugu State, they are using the name of Enugu government to build RUGA for Fulani. These are the weak men that have now allowed and make it easier for those who promise to dip their Quran, dip their own sword of blood in our sea when they have killed all of us. They couldn't even come far. They couldn't even break the belt in the middle belt of Nigeria before they killed Uthman Dan Fodio, the terrorist, their great-grandfather. Now we have weak men in southern Nigeria that will do the job for them conveniently. They will set you up, set everybody up. Where the Yorubas, not those who are screaming that Igboho must be killed. Nobody sending message, killing. Is a this, is a that. Yorubas who bought the propaganda too. But we are still waiting on the Yoruba governors to be bold enough and coin a name of their own RUGA that they will create. At the National Assembly level, they were having a chat about it. Let's go there. Take a, listen, this is the first part.
Permit me to lead the debate on the bill for an act to regulate animal husbandry and ranches establishment as an antidote for the perennial violent clashes between sedentary farmers and nomadic herders in Nigeria. Mr. President, that erupt from pastoralists and farmers' interaction in Nigeria, which have assumed a warlike dimension with far-reaching negative impact on the people and the country as a whole. As stakeholders in the Nigerian project and elected representatives of the people, we cannot afford to look on while the country burns into ashes as a result of violent clashes between sedentary farmers and nomadic herders. Doing so would amount to abdication of our statutory and leadership responsibilities. The menace of farmers and herders crisis can easily be cured through a legislative therapy banning open grazing in Nigeria. My dear colleagues, historically, farmers-herders conflicts date back to pre-colonial times. However, these violent conflicts have become more severe, intense, and frequent in recent decades due to a number of factors, which include, but not limited to, the following: population pressure, climate change, livestock mobility and marketability, absence of laws on pastoralism, inefficient conflict management mechanisms, proliferation of arms and urbanization, etc. Reports have it that since 2016, more than 4,000 lives have been lost as a result of farmers-herders conflicts. Also, over 5 million people have been displaced, particularly in the Middle Belt region and other parts of northern Nigeria. With dwindling productivity in crops production and herds, this conflict has reportedly cost Nigeria an average of $3.5 million, or 47% of its internally generated revenues. The effect of herders-farmers conflicts and its implication on food security in Nigeria is already staring us in the face as a result of high cost of food items, which is almost becoming out of the reach of the common man. Whereas other countries with huge farmers and herders populations, including Mauritania, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, have passed pastoral laws and codes which have helped to mitigate the incidence of clashes between sedentary farmers and nomadic herders. This situation is unfortunately treated with kid gloves in Nigeria. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, you will observe that the converging dynamics of demography, technology, and urbanization have collectively complicated the hitherto simple and fraternal relationship between our local farmers and nomadic pastoralists. There is an unprecedented increase in the number of farmers who need more portions of land to farm, and herds with larger herds of cattle who also need more space for grazing, whereas land is fixed. Mr. President, the absence of a regulatory framework or legislation on pastoralism and livestock mobility generally has created a chaotic scenario of survival of the fittest between sedentary farmers and nomadic herders in Nigeria. My dear colleagues, this is not acceptable.
Nuisance, Lele.
You hear all of that? So that was them introducing, and mind you, something that should have been trashed from the word go. They continue to entertain it, and this is now at a second reading. And I think they've passed it as well. You need to know the details of what they passed. But the debates. Here is another person who was also contributed rather, Abaribe.
A disintegration of our lives through the incessant herder-farmer clash, destruction of plants and all that by those. And indeed, that has also led to the invasion of Nigeria by those who call themselves herders but are not Nigerian citizens. I recall, as a member of this Senate, that this bill at a particular time was also introduced on the floor of this Senate by Senator Kwankwaso. I recall also the problem that was following the debate, and that problem is what we will need to tackle if we have to get to the nitty-gritty of this bill. While I agree that now is the time for us to stop open grazing, it also means that this is also the time for us to take another look at the law that makes land to be in the hands of states. Because there's no way you're going to be able to establish a ranch in a state if the state government says that they don't want it. I'm glad that Senator Zam has said that those who are sedentary, in states of origin of the herders, should be able to establish ranches. And of course, he has also given us the costing. But in order to do this, we must go back and look at the law. Because if we don't deal with that law, merely asking people to go, if they want to establish ranch, to now go and talk with those. No one owns land, it's the state governments that own land. That means that even if you agree with the owners or settlers or a community or that, if the state government does not give its consent, then it means that you will not be able to go forward with it. So as we consider this, I also want us to look at the Land Use Act as an impediment to this particular very wonderful bill, to ensure that we can get and put to rest this matter of herder-farmer clash, and I can see why. And I want to also recall to all my colleagues that at a particular time, the former governor of Kano State, Ganduje, suggested to everyone that he has enough land in Kano State for all the herders in Nigeria to come and graze. But of course, what happened is that some people are using these herders and all that to destabilize this country. Just 2 weeks ago, I was at home in my own local government in Obingwa, far down in the southern part of Nigeria in Abia State. Some women came to me and said that the herders were bringing their cows to finish up all their planted, and that there's nothing they can do. That even when they come there, they will threaten them that they are going to kill and maim, and there's nothing they can do about it. They wanted for me to do something about it. So I had to go to the local government chairman and said, let's go and see the DPO and let us, and they had to go to plead with those herders. That is the extent to which this has reached. Everyone in Nigeria, if you go from the west to the coast, all the way up to the Middle Belt, and you go up to the north, farmers are under threat. And what it has led to is the food crisis.
The food crisis in Nigeria. Let's take a look at it this way. That is Nigerian House of Senate, or the Senate, discussing how or if a ranch should be set up for Fulanis that are killing farmers because of their cows. And every now and then I continue to sort of ask myself, do you need law, like national law, to help people to set up ranches? Like, is there no environmental law that guides farming and all those things? Like, if you have farming and agricultural ministry, and agriculture ministry and the rest of that, like, if I want to start a farm and I want to make it a ranch, but actually I go approach any community or even the state government, the large scale stuff, right? State government, and buy land from them. And once I pay for that and the rest, then I start my project, my business. The only business that the government will have in my business is because they want to come and collect their taxes. Why are they discussing to ban open grazing or not to ban, when it is actually banned in the southern part of Nigeria anyway? It is because it is Nigeria, the state of the current Nigeria. Unfortunate, you would say. Listen to another guy, Elumelu's brother.
Which the second reading, I think we must be commended. This issue, I believe, if we handle it with all the seriousness that is deserved, we will begin to see respite in the farmers-herders clashes. But distinguished Senate President, please, we should expand the role of the Commission, not only as at establishing ranches. There is need for extension services. There is need for bringing better breeds of cattle. An average cattle of a pastoral Fulani man gives you less than 1 liter of milk a day, as against 30 liters of the hybrid cattle. And This must be taken into consideration if we are going to make it a source of livelihood. Because as it is today, it's just a way of life, not necessarily livelihood for these people. So this is highly commendable, sir. And we need to emphasize, apart, what are the conditions that will give private ranching also the help they needed to go ahead. As you know, everybody is trying to run away from government-funded companies because they are not always being very well managed. We need to consider a way and manner for which private ranchers will be accessed to this commission, and they will get the necessary help for them to expand and establish ranches. Thank you very much, the Senate President. This is a wonderful bill. I hope we live to see it pass into law. Thank you, sir.
The Senate President, my name is Karimi Sunday Steve. I'm from Kogi State. I represent the people of Kogi West. I want to appreciate my colleague, a true son of North Central, for bringing this bill at this time. Mr. President, you know, about 2 weeks ago, you handled something similar to this in a motion, where we call for a national summit. We all know that this is a national problem. It is not just a state problem. It's a problem that is ravaging all over our nation. And we cannot just sit down as responsible parliamentarians without finding a solution to it. Thank you for your able leadership, sir. First of all, in the north, we used to have a cattle route with open grazing those days. Those cattle routes, they have been taken over by communities. And now, no cattle routes. The cattle, they are all over the place. You will even see them on Abuja Street. You see them all over the place. They enter people's land, farmland, and causing problems all over the country. This bill must be allowed to have its place. We are going to consider this bill appropriately. All states must be ready to have cattle ranch. You know, the last government, they set up something that they called RUGA, and they gave, some states said they wouldn't go with it, and they rejected it. But when this bill is passed into law, by the time we are doing the public hearings, we are going to invite stakeholders all over the country to ensure that we treat this issue as a national problem. So that all these killings going on all over the place in the name of cattle ranching, in the name of kidnapping, we are going to find a solution to it. We cannot continue like this. This is a responsible government. This government has started well. Previous government, they've not been able to find solution to it. I believe the leadership of National Assembly, headed by you, and the leadership of this country, headed by Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, will find a solution to this problem. We are going to start with this bill, and we are going to pass it into law by God's grace. Thank you.
But the major thing into the clause by clause consideration of the bill, that we must have a public hearing. We must bring in all the stakeholders, the Farmers Association, the Mitiala, and then we must bring in the state governments and all the stakeholders so that everybody will have a say. And we must have a holistic discussion on this. And then also, like Senator the civil senator Baribe pointed out, if they need to tinker with the constitution in terms of the Land Use Act, which is in the constitution, to enable us create a clause that will allow easy
nuisance lele.
bunch of nuisance and criminals, traitors, all of them. Do you understand what the bill that they call the ban on open grazing that they are debating in the National Assembly is actually all about? Do you? No? Okay. The bill is presented as a bill to ban open grazing. Sounds good? Because that is what you are going to read. Ban on open grazing. But before we ban open grazing, all of the states in Nigeria must be ready to